Thank you so much for tuning back into another episode here on GEMS Podcast. With me is my special guest, Carolin Hauser. And here is a bit about Carolin. She is a German-trained naturopathic doctor, humanistic psychotherapist, and Family Constellations Facilitator. Is the author of the award-winning book, Blossom, Your 7 Steps to Sexual Healing, and creatrix of the Pleasure IQ, a blissful marriage method. Ooh, doesn't that get y'all tingling, y'all? Carolyn is an internationally recognized speaker and teacher on the subjects of spirituality, relationships, emotional healing, and bonding based love making. She combines her knowledge about energetic healing and conscious co-creation to help couples go from feeling frustrated, stuck, and disconnected in their intimacy to feeling deeply connected, excited, and fulfilled so they can feel whole and fully expressed in life and are able to create honeymoon feelings that last. Her work is based on the intersection of cutting-edge intimacy advice and practically applied quantum physics and biology, and shows how each individual's authentic and true self is the source of one's own good, a place of unlimited abundance, creativity, courage, and joyful existence. And without further ado, please welcome Carolin Hauser.
Thanks for having me.
My pleasure, Carolyn. So I forgot to ask you, since you are a doctor, do you want me to call you Dr. Carolyn?
Shucks. Yeah.
Hold on. So welcome to the platform, Carolyn. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your insight today.
Thanks for having me.
So, Carolyn, before we dive into our segment where we're just really going to unpack the law of attraction as well as some of the other incredible things that you're working on, I definitely want to give the audience a chance to get to know you on a somewhat personal level. And I do that one or two ways. The first option is to do an icebreaker, or we could do a rapid fire 10 question game. What are you in the mood for?
Let's do the icebreaker. Whatever that is.
So we're breaking the ice with Genesis and Carolyn. Here goes your question. So I want you to share something crazy that you have done in your life or something fun and interesting about yourself.
Okay, I think the craziest thing I've ever done is I'm from Germany, and about 18 years ago now, I fell in love with an American, and I had about $7 left in my bank account. And I was praying about it and saying, oh God, like, what should I do? What should I do? But it was very clear that it was the right thing to like follow him and go to the United States. And I'm like, oh my God, I had just gotten a job. I just graduated. I was just starting my practice in Germany as naturopathic doctor. And then this guy appeared. I'm like, dang, universe, So I left Germany and I immigrated to the States with basically, well, first I came as a visitor with $7 in my bank account. I think I don't know if I would do that again. It all worked out in the end, but it was very nerve-wracking and I would say a little crazy.
Oh, wow. That is crazy all across the world. So how long have y'all been together now?
Well, that relationship only lasted 2 months and it brought me to the States. It just really served that purpose of me coming to the States. I fell in love with Santa Barbara, and he really didn't want to live there, and also didn't really want to be with me. So it was more one-sided. But I'm very grateful because I've had a really good life here. So
amazing.
Yeah.
Do you often go back and visit Germany?
As much as I can, but I have to say the last time was way before COVID, so I'm hoping to be able to go this summer.
Yeah. Nice. I have a good friend who is married to a lady from Germany, and I just love like to sit down and hear her talk. I just think she speaks is just so beautiful.
Well, then you'll love this interview.
let's jump into how to really have that law of attraction, but then also to make love and attraction last. Because there's a difference between, you being attractive and just having that law of attraction, but then meshing in, okay, what exactly is love? How do I make the love last? How do I make the attraction last? Because sometimes the honeymoon phase, it's just that honeymoon. And then it starts to fizzle out. And people fail to realize that not only did you commit to this person when you got married, there's work to staying married. And I told my husband, but I still want you to date me. Like, I want you to bring me the flowers, the different things that you did when you were wooing me. That doesn't stop, buddy. So from your perspective and some of the work that you have done with your patients and in the field, talk about the difference between love, because sometimes people often overlook the 4-letter word and they have their own viewpoints of love.
Yeah. And, I just, for you listeners to know, I came to what I'm going to share through a lot of heartbreak and a lot of, not a lot, but enough relationships starting out great, feeling like, oh God, this is it, having the honeymoon feelings, and then relationships collapsing and ending, and not, there wasn't really any much explanation other than that's just how it is, kind of a thing. And luckily, about 5 years ago, I came across a book that was written by a woman that had a very similar story, where her relationships would start out great, and then they would, after a month or a few months or a year, they would just fall apart. And she just would not believe that that's just how it is. And she began a 16-year research journey into biology, ancient scripture, not just Christian, but all kinds of, Buddhist texts, Taoist texts, Hinduism. Like, she looked in all the religions. And what she found was there were hints in these, especially in the ancient spiritual texts, where the sages or the wise men and women were warning to be too crazy, basically, too crazy with sex, because obviously in the ancient language, they would talk about how that would blind us or would fill us or would even drive us crazy, and that there is a different way. And back then, obviously, they didn't have neuroscience, or, they didn't study biology, but they had an experience of that when they went too crazy sexually, things would go crazy. And when they stayed calmer and did it in a different way, and it's called different things in different traditions, but through all the spiritual traditions, there is a description of a way when a man and a woman comes together in a union that's a calmer way, a more sacred way. They call it like the holy embrace, the sacred chamber. Like, they have all kinds of names for it. That made this woman that we're on this 16-year journey of figuring out what was really going on with in men and women intimate relationships, sexual relationships, that they were so volatile. That made her start trying things out and kind of putting two and two together. And then eventually she met her husband, who was a biology teacher, and he had a lot of neuroscience because he had been helping young men and men with porn addiction. And so together, and her name is Marnia and her husband's name was Gary, they basically kind of put the puzzle pieces together that we as human beings have two programs for love when it comes to lovemaking. One that's really just intended for procreation, so making babies. So you're very aware of that one, how that one works. and then the other one, and so we don't know this. Generally, we don't know. We only know that there is one way to have sex, and but there is another way, actually, that we're not taught, that has been forgotten in a sense, where it does not lead to babies. It leads to a lot of bonding, because it uses a different set of hormones. So basically, when we have sex the normal way, it makes it so that biology kicks in, and biology and our genes, they want us to procreate with as many people as possible. So it's programmed into us that when we use that kind of sex, that we get bored with each other. That's part of the program. It wants to, like, our subconscious program wants to push us away from each other. So we look for new mates, basically, to make more variety of offspring. And it's obviously not it's not in support of us being deeply connected and deeply bonded. So knowing that, so when I read that, first of all, I was like, what is she talking about? Because this other way doesn't include orgasm. And when I tell, because that's really the procreative act, is like the orgasm is the procreative act. So nature was very clever to put a lot of hormones that make us feel super good with getting pregnant or making babies. And all of our brains, in a sense, are hooked on that because we think that that's what love is, that feeling, when it's really just a neurochemical cocktail, you know. And so there is a different way of making love where you don't have an orgasm, where you still have a really nice high. It's just very different. It's not like a explosive event. It's more of like a heart, really deeply heart connected, ongoing kind of feeling that you can nurture with your partner. And because it uses a different set of hormones, specifically oxytocin, it makes it so that we become very stable and harmonious with each other. So yes, you got to give up orgasm, but for most people, it's worth it because you will have the honeymoon phase lasting, and you are very playful and stable and lighthearted with each other. So it takes care of most arguing, most triggering, most misunderstandings. So once I came across this, at first I was skeptical, and then I started implementing it and practicing, and now know from experience that a lot of pretty much all my relationship problems came from using this other program and being thrown into so when you have an orgasm, your brain releases dopamine. And when it releases dopamine, it is the same effect as taking heroin or cocaine. And we wouldn't be doing that like a couple times a week. No, or if we would realize that would cause problems in how we feel. And then when our inner chemistry shifts after we have the dopamine high, the receptors and the dopamine goes down, and we start feeling really shitty and depressed mostly. And unless we do something more and take something more or do something else to stimulate ourselves, which kind of creates a vicious cycle. And when we have the drop in the dopamine, our perception shifts. So we see the world differently, we see our partner differently. All of a sudden we see all the faults and flaws, and it just causes a lot of problems.
So that is an interesting study, because the other form of intimacy is not really talked about, because like you said, some people just see the sexual attraction, the sexual drive as, the way let's va-va-voom, get it in and please ourselves. But then the other way sounds like it really just takes that, like you said, that harmonious effect and really connect us to really see one another, but then really what the union is about, to really, not only are we connecting like intimately, we're connecting emotionally, we're connecting physically, some that may be spiritual.
Yep.
And you're tapping into all the 5 different elements and senses to really have that congruent experience, is what I'm hearing.
That's exactly right.
And I feel like sometimes in society, because society is so polarized, and if my husband were on this, he would say, well, in society, it's sex, drugs, money, and something else sells. Sex sells. And when you see all these polarizing things in the media, people think that that's all it is. But until you actually spend time to really do the work and then really fulfill yourself, so you're not chasing one thing after another, because you're not going to be fulfilled if you're running after something, because you're constantly looking for that pleasure, that pleasing.
What we're really chasing is just the dopamine high. Dopamine is highly addictive. It's 13 times more addictive than heroin. Wow. And so, I mean, advertisers and people that sell to us, they know this, and our brains are still somewhat, like cavemanish, our brains have not evolved to the level of stimulation that we have. And so we fall for the traps. Our brains fall for the traps, with food, with sex, with all kinds of things, screen time, porn, video games, all those things.
Everyone has their vices these days, and some vices are good, others are not so good. So from the couples aspect, how can we get couples today to start reconnecting and truly connecting with one another based on their love languages, based on that intimacy, based on listening, giving each other that intellectual time, and just really supporting people. And whenever I say supporting people, in order for you to really support people, you should support the one that you live with, because that's the one that's keeping your home together. Then everything else outside of that becomes external and is an extra bonus. But unless you get your house in alignment, nothing else is going to matter, in my opinion.
I agree with you. I think 3 out of 4 police calls go to domestic violence stuff. It's like the war's not somewhere outside. It's like in our homes, disagreements. And a lot of it's just because people are traumatized and trigger each other and unhealed, So, so really, to me, bonding-based lovemaking, that's what this other way is called, is the solution. Because when you move into the practice and learning, at first it's education. First it's learning the science behind it and really getting like a good cognitive grip why you should be doing this. Because if you don't, then when given the opportunity to have an orgasm, you will go for it. I mean, I'm just telling you straight up, and it takes one to know one. So like the first step is really educating yourself on it and finding enough convincing arguments so that your conscious mind at least is completely on board. And Marnia did an amazing job writing a book and collecting, all the research in her 16 years. So I always recommend for people to get the book. It's called Cupid's Poison Arrow by Marnia Robinson, and it's on Amazon. So Marnia was a researcher, right? She did not teach this to people. And it's one thing to read it. So the first step is education. And the second step is get help when practicing, because it's not as easy as I don't know if it sounds easy, but it's not easy to help your brain. It's almost like, if you've been eating meat and sugar all your life, and now you're wanting to learn how to live off fruits and water, it's going to be a little challenging for a little while. And it's good to have somebody who's already done it and knows, because there's going to be detox, there's going to be frustration, there's going to be emotions that come up. And so it's good to have somebody and have a community of like-minded people, because there's not that many people quite yet that know about this. And so the more you can surround yourself with people who have similar beliefs, the more likely is your success, right? In general in life. So
I like the analogy that you use, going from being like a meat eater to being like a vegan. Like your body is going to like, alert, like where's the meat? And then you'll start to really feel sluggish and etc., because your body's going through its own process of detox, getting rid of the toxins and creating a new environment so it can prep for the new nutrients and food and the overall wellness that you're introducing into your own personal ecosystem. So I think that was a really good analogy to talk about that. And then what are some of the 5 tips that someone who is interested in learning the bonding through lovemaking that they can do?
Yeah, so there is a certain, so the good thing is that we do have a subconscious program for bonding and for getting rewarded for bonding. And you as a mom or new mom, this, we get rewarded for taking care and bonding with our babies, and it's a really good feeling. So the oxytocin feels really good. So the more we can do things that a mother and a child would do, which is unconditional, loving, unconditional touch, right? So it's not so much about the techniques, it's more about your come from, because as adults, let's face it, most of us only get physical attention when either somebody wants sex or we ourselves want sex. We either give it because we want it, we want to turn somebody on, or we're feeling in the mood. Very rarely do we experience just touch for touch's sake as adults. And so with the oxytocin, it really only turns, or the switches in our brain only turn on when we receive unconditional love through touching, kissing, massaging, looking, talking, whatever that is. So the more we can shift into a paradigm of giving when in our lovemaking, in our everyday life, when we both do that, oftentimes the reality is with couples, at the end of the day, we're all maxed out. We don't have anything to give, right? That's really the right. And so it's counterintuitive that actually giving, it would give you something. And I have to say, if you're with somebody who's a narcissist or a taker, you can give and not get anything back. But if you're with a partner who's also a naturally giving person, then if you can start, even if you feel like you have nothing left, if you can start pushing yourself and being even more generous, you're going to start feeling positive effects of it.
Yeah. I like that. And one thing that I like to do with my spouse, my husband, my mate, however you want to refer to him, is some days I just tell him, babe, I want a hug. Like, I just want to feel like his warm body against mine. Because sometimes my body could be very cold in nature, especially like my hands and feet. But then when I touch him, his body is very warm in nature. So I was like, it's kind of like the yin and yang. And I was like, heat me up, babe, heat me up. And I'm like, you're my human heater. And sometimes it's like playful or whatnot, but sometimes just those little things can really help in the relationship, or just going on dates, or listening and finding out, okay, how does your partner want to be communicated with? Because we've all heard the statement or sentiment, treat others as if you want to be treated, but that may not be how they want to be treated. So ask, how do you want to be treated? How do you want me to love you? What turns you on? And ask those questions, because sometimes people fail to ask those questions, and then you think that and then there's stuff that you don't. Yeah. And when 1 year in marriage is going to look totally different than 5-6 years in marriage, because we have evolved and we have changed. So we constantly need to be learning and exploring one another. And then whenever you bring a bundle of joy into the mix, a baby, you have to realize, yes, your baby is important, but also your mate is important. So you have to find a balance between being a mom, being a dad, but also being, partners and lovers and friends and etc.
Yeah. So the beautiful thing with the bonding-based lovemaking is it's not left up to chance. So in my world, people that get married, my experience is that really they want a sacred union, and they think by giving each other vows and having that one day that union is created and that it's just going to last. And most of us have made the experience that is not so. What people don't know is that a sacred union requires a practice. It's like saying, okay, we want a sacred reunion. We want to build a beautiful home. You don't just say that to each other and give each other the promise. You actually would have to go to work every day and put some energy into making the house and making it beautiful. It would take some time. And then once the house is there, you still have to take care of the house, And so the bonding-based lovemaking is actually the practice that will, first of all, create the sacred union, and then also keep it going, as if the sacred union is really a being, or, well, the way I describe it is, at first it's like a little baby that you plant together and you put energy into it, and then it grows and it grows and it grows, and then eventually it becomes your bubble and you live in it. And the more the commitment in a sacred union is that you commit to the practice together, and it's really daily. It's a daily schedule. It's like going to the gym. You have a commitment to spending at least like half an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening doing these bonding behaviors and making that time for each other. And so it's not left up to chance. It's not left up to being in the mood or not being in the mood. And it's just it uses a very different program where it's not based on libido. It's not based on even, him having to be hard, because it's not based on the novelty or the procreation-based sex that requires performance and all those things. It's really based on energy and love and giving and receiving love, and the body starting to be turned on and excited and wanting to have sex without even doing any traditional foreplay or doing any stimulation on the genitals or anything. It's very much based on learning to cultivate this love energy. It becomes very physical and very physically pleasurable, but it avoids going into the trap of just wanting to,
yeah.
Yeah.
I get it. Just wanting to get it on. Yeah. So, Carolyn, before we go into the call to action, can you briefly highlight the 7 steps to sexual healing? Because I think it may help the audience as they begin to learn more about bonding and lovemaking, because this is interesting.
Yeah. Well, it has to do with really beginning where you are and just realizing that, just taking inventory, basically beginning where you are, and then opening up to your own emotion. A lot of people that have gone through trauma, whether it's sexual or other, and also in our culture, we're so used to not be connected to our own self. And we do that through not connecting with our emotions and not allowing our emotions. So learning to really feel your own emotions and allowing them is a big step in the healing. And I don't have the words in front of me right now. And then learning to see correctly, because oftentimes we see pain or suffering as something bad. And if we can start seeing it actually as the thing that propelled us, or if we could start looking for why would this have served me in life, like changing the perspective of it so it can become a gift. And you also start seeing yourself in a greater perspective of, I'm not just me, like I'm connected to my ancestors and they went through stuff, and because they went through stuff, I have certain programs, and healing all those things. Integrating your feminine and masculine, and really learning about those energies. And off the top of my head, those are, some of the things that are really crucial to not just sexual trauma, but my story was that, that's my story. So, but these steps are universal in trauma healing and are very connected to us feeling safe enough to actually wanting to deeply bond with somebody, right? Because if we've had bad experiences, our subconscious will not want to bond with anybody anymore.
Amazing. And thank you for sharing that. And Carolyn, we're going to jump into the call to action as we wind down. So what do you want the audience to walk away from once they just heard a glimpse of your story and the expertise that you teach on?
Yeah, well, I hope that your listeners are curious enough to check this out at least a little bit and see if it resonates with them. And when I say this, it's like the bonding-based lovemaking. And I have a free training on my website that goes over the 5 shifts that I've seen and I think are necessary for any couple to really either get off the roller coaster, or if they're just like roommates, to get back into, as for all couples, to get back into the zone where they were when they first met, where things were easy, where they were in sync, where communication was easy, where they were lighthearted and playful with each other and attracted, obviously. And I'm sure you're going to put the link to my website in your show notes. I do have a YouTube channel also with some of the bonding-based practices and principles. So lots of free resources for you guys to check out. And just know that there's a different way than therapy. It's a lot more fun than therapy. I can tell you that. And in my experience, more effective because it really works with the subconscious instead of just the conscious part of us. And I believe it's the key to longevity, great health, and great relationship bliss.
Awesome. And outside of your website and YouTube, is there a place that you primarily hang out in the social media space?
Yes. Facebook. So anybody, feel free to message me on Facebook. I pretty much live on Facebook. So Facebook Messenger is a very good place. Yeah.
Amazing. And there you have it, listeners and viewers of GEMS podcast. You just heard the one and only Carolyn Hauser. All of her contact information will be in the show notes. So make sure you read, and scroll down and tap in with her. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. We're on 40+ platforms, and you can see the video component on YouTube by typing @GEMS with Genesis Amaris Kemp for the YouTube channel and see all videos there. Until we chat next time, peace, love, and lots of blessings. Have yourself an amazing one.